Hello, my friend. This is a follow-up on the previous video I made about Chinese regime. There's a point I mentioned, but I forgot to elaborate or explain or elucidate on. United States establishment, Russia, Iran, Israel, of course under Israel, right? United Nations came and protected the regime in Syria, that very small minority. That is Putin-like, Chinese regime-like, Holagu's-like, Netanyahu's-like. They're all brothers, right? Murdered millions in Syria, right? And they still support him, the Arab Gulf countries and all that stuff. Murdered millions. His regime and that of the Alawites in Syria, which really took over formally, the assassins, they are called the assassins. In 1962, about the year I was born, I would say, or 1961, right, is basically, we used to be indoctrinated, right? Give me a second, please. We used to be indoctrinated in school. Our schools used to teach us. Now, the regime is really occultic in Syria. The Alawites, they're an occult, the assassins. Oh, they're dark, man. Nobody knows, right, really what they are and so on. But they are accustomed to murder and killing and gulags and torture in jails for so many decades and so on. There are horror stories about them. I would not stand on their side or identify with them, no matter what, due to their behavior. They're accustomed. They are the torture and killing is natural to them. But nonetheless, they own the education system and they call themselves Socialist Resurrection Party. Of course, that's a mask, if you will. Supposedly, socialism is the route to communism, right? They're very close to Stalin and Lenin in thoughts, and Hitler and Ayatollahs and Mao and, you know, the Chinese and Cuba's, Castro's and and you know, and there's that octopus, that head of the octopus that's called Israel. But what I want to say is, you folks, American folks, Western folks, you went there and murdered so many Sunnis. When this regime used to indoctrinate us, we pupils in school, elementary, secondary, and not just in schools, but outside of schools as well, you know, they would spread propaganda and so on against the United States and the West in general, and capitalism, and they would give us all kind of problems that we were made to believe by this regime in Syria. At least I can speak about where I grew up and the trends that were going on in there, right? That regime and Alawites made us understand that America and of course Western Europe, like England and so on and so forth, are the source of all our problems, you know, down to the nitty-gritty, down to our daily lives, down to our spending, down to our poverty, down to the killing, and now we know it's really there's someone else above, you know, there's like one step above or below, if you will, and that's Israel, of course. White Americans, I think they're just oblivious to what's going on. Some of them are, you know, some of them are not. But that's the regime you supported, you know. We grew up on such notions that, oh, America, 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 you know, like America, and you support the Iran's regime and they call you the greatest Satan and stuff like that. But that's the regime. Sunnis never taught us that, really. You know, we used to go to the mosque, for example, and pray. They never said anything about that, you know, like they taught us how to be good and, you know, and learn and so on and so forth. And it wasn't really formal. There was no organizational things, you know, you just went there and the imam talked and, you know, that's all there's to it. But that's the regime. And that regime, of course, is entrenched in terrorism, along with those Iranian regime and the Russia's regime and the Netanyahu's and so on. Oh, they're entrenched in terrorism. They produced all terrorism, and guess what? They dressed it up. They dressed the Muslim up with it, you know, saying, oh, look at those Sunnis, right? Well, now you know different, don't you? After what, millions perished in there? your friends. It's the victim killing the victim, folks. But what I'm trying to say is the point is the indoctrination we received, whether in school, whether it's wherever it is, about the United States, the Americans, the West, and the white people, and so on. Oh man, it was agonizing, and we really were children. We didn't think much of that, right? We didn't take it seriously. But when coming to the United States, we still, and they committed terrorism, and then Bush, of course, being their brother, the two Bushes actually, that's the same family as Netanyahu, as Pustalinin, as Ayatollahs, and so on. They committed terrorism. Those Shiites, those Pustalinins and Ayatollahs and Assads of Syria, they committed terrorism like September 11 and so on. And then Bush, of course, goes and attacks Iraq, right? Murders 1 million. And now they make us also understand, look, the Americans came and did so and so in Iraq to you. See what they do? They pit people against each other. They fabricate and manufacture events, terrorism and so on and so forth. And they pit nations against each other. And they watch the killing happen, the bloodletting and so on. And people don't know, of course, people look at those creatures and they see human beings, so when you see someone like that looks like you and talks like you and walks like you and eats like you don't suspect that they're harboring ill wills and ulterior motives toward you, and they're very capable of hiding that. That's the regime you supported in Syria. That's the regime that you killed millions for in Syria, and so on and so forth. You, white America. That's the follow-up on that particular point, which I mentioned, but then I strayed away from, because there's so many ideas. Sometimes you forget that your train of thought, kind of disconnects here and there. But when I watched it, I found that I missed that point. That's the point of indoctrination. That very same regime of Syria, that very same regime in Iraq, and so on and so forth. Those Shiites that used to teach people about the United States and what it did, right? Remember something, I want to remind you of something. Saddam Hussein, after the invasion of Kuwait, which was warranted, really, he didn't just come about and pull it off. The Kuwaitis kept digging under him, and by help from certain American companies, they started drilling horizontally under Iraq, right? There's like this horizontal drilling for oil, right? They started drilling under Iraq, and they warned them time and again, and they talked, and to no avail, right? Those Kuwaitis were basically trying to trip Saddam Hussein into doing something bad. And eventually the little fuck, we know that there's something wrong with him now. I mean, that's like, I'm talking about his apparent history, right? They invaded supposedly Kuwait, and guess what? They were waiting for it because Iran's Iraq war, 10 years, failed to dislodge the Sunnis from power in Iraq, right? Which are the majority. And those people that you came there and put in power, they're the ones who carried out terrorism against you, and they're the ones to indoctrinate people against you. The great Satan, right? Well, there you go. Now, the point I'm trying to make about Saddam is after Kuwait war, he did something called the oil for food deal, right? Basically, the West, and these are Israeli companies, right, started taking the oil, and part of it, allowed like buying of food, like a whole nation is now seized, it's like hijacked. Take its oil and then give them some food, not even medicine, right? I think there was some medicine and so on and so forth. And you had all the oil, right? Okay, let's take it hypothetically, realistically, right? United States took the oil, right, from Iraq, and they send whatever food, probably stale sometimes and stuff like that. But let me ask you this: after he was removed from power, Saddam Hussein, United States has no longer oil for food or any oil at all. Iraqi's oil now is controlled by Iran and Israel. Have a nice day, Americans. You see what's happening to you now, right? Trillions are stolen on a daily basis and given into the stock market into investors on your account, raising debt limits and whatnot. Not just that, you have to support two other programs among many others that nobody knows about, right? One is called Obamacare, that siphon of what, 1 trillion a year, and one is called Bitcoin of Israel, because they don't want it to falter, so You're shelling out trillions, not that you want or know about or like it. It's put on your future and send into those cryptocurrencies. Why? Because eventually the plan for this cryptocurrency is to really destroy you financially completely, take out every dollar in your pocket and make you live like animals. Like uh, uh, like the oil for food program in Iraq. It's like a cryptocurrency for food. Have a nice day, my friends, and trust me, where this bunch is leading you, the Netanyahus and the Obamas and the Trumps, all these brothers, right? And the Bidens and the Stalinin and the Johnsons and the Shanghais and the Ayatollahs and the Castros, oh, they are leading you into hell, into that animal farm that is going to make you live like real animals. Don't have children, folks. If things continue this way, don't have children. Have a nice day, my friends.